William James Moriarty is definitely the criminal consultant we need. He may take the law into his own hands, but as of right now, everything that I've seen thus far, I can't say I disagree with the man. When you introduce a story that's as personal as a father trying to get help for his son, the wife, the father, the son, pouring rain, no way to get a doctor, the doctor's out of town, well, you just so happen to work for a very rich man. You're the reason said man is even alive because of the plants you take care of. It's not unreasonable to say, could you use your personal doctor to help my dying son? And that man turns you away. I can't say I'm shedding a tear when I see him get done in by a grapefruit. And honestly, this episode really has me excited for the future of the show. Episode 1 of Moriarty the Patriot didn't have too many Sherlock Holmes clues that you could follow in terms of figuring out who the big bad person is. And that's kind of an issue when you think of any good Sherlock Holmes tale, is generally they leave the breadcrumbs, so as Sherlock kind of pieces it together, unless you're watching BBC's Sherlock where he just kind of magically solves things in thin air, you're able to figure it out alongside the character in question. Episode 1 of Moriarty the Patriot didn't really do it all that well. It did it decently enough for the time it had, and then episodes 2 and 3 were a lot more personal. With episode 4, if this is a good indicator of how the crimes are going to be committed, I would be all for it. This is a show that doesn't necessarily have to be a mystery. It could be a thriller. Because we're not focusing on Sherlock, the mystery may come on Sherlock's side as he tries to figure out who Moriarty is and how these crimes are being committed. That might be a very interesting formula, because watching him literally just be a math professor interacting with someone who's an evil scumbag, and no one can convince me otherwise, in his big mansion, and he just... Honestly, if you're letting little kids die because you don't want your doctor to touch a lower class citizen, you deserve all of the death. Not even gonna apologize for saying that. So to have him really interact and not have it be a mystery, just we know who the bad person is. The Moriartys also know who the bad people are. And what it is rather you're finding a solution for the evil in this mansion. I really like that about this episode, and I would love to see more be like this. I don't necessarily have to see William track down killers. I don't necessarily have to have him do Sherlock Holmes style mystery to figure out who needs to be punished. Rather, I'm perfectly fine with him bouncing around and seeing an atrocity and finding a way to give him criminal advice in order to make their life better, but also give the justice for the crime at hand. I would love to see that, and like I mentioned, if you introduce Sherlock eventually down the line, which we know they will, have him try to track down Moriarty, that be the mystery and the thriller be on Moriarty's side. That would be really engaging, my honest opinion, and I think would really turn this into something truly close to perfect, and I really hope they commit to that angle. Overall, though, I think the pain of simply having a broken family, it's not the most original story ever, but I think they really did hammer in just how raw and vulnerable these two really were. Something I really like about William is how he's someone who really does have a good heart and sees the violent humanity as something that needs to be cleansed, and those that are burdened by that vileness need to have the bonds that even he has with his brothers. And it seems like in his viewpoint, the only way for that bond to never be unbroken is to do something as criminal as killing those that are the reason that your son is no longer on this earth. And it definitely is a toxic mindset, and I think will eventually cloud his mind eventually down the line. I don't expect in season 1. I think in season 1 we'll get a brief glimpse of that, and then when we come into the spring season of next year, where we get the second core, that's where we might start questioning William James Moriarty a lot more. But as of right now, watching him view someone who he's honestly playing up this entire situation quite well. He's dining with them. He's kind of observing. He's like, oh, this man has heart condition and he uses this medicine to help with that. And even though I didn't know exactly what grapefruit would do to his heart medicine, I knew that's where they were going. This is a kind of time period where not all the exotic fruits and stuff like that that we consume in our day-to-day life are known to the public. Even the rich people who have this tree in their yard, they don't know that you could eat it. And that's kind of just something that naturally happens over time. So there's not that widespread knowledge that if you eat this fruit or you eat this piece of meat or something, it could have a negative reaction with your food in question. And it's honestly a pretty genius kill, probably the best kill we've seen so far, because rather than having something like a house on fire or a savage murder, literally it's someone who ate a piece of fruit in their yard and got killed because of it. There's nothing that can be really pointed to as this was attempted murder, especially because of how unknowledgeable most people are about grapefruit in this time period. And that's why watching the whole situation play out was really nice, but I will admit, they did have me a little shocked with how they portrayed it, because I thought what was going to happen was, of course, they would provide and say, hey, you know, this is how you have to do it. You're going to give him the grapefruit and this will kill him. I wasn't expecting the wife to be in on it because she seemed very deranged. She seemed like someone who lost her marbles, and I thought she was going to get killed. When she was cutting the grapefruit, I thought they did a beautiful directing choice of she would slice, you would see the gross face, she would slice, you would see another gross face, and you just really saw the vileness and evilness of this man. Someone who you may look at and say, oh, what's really all that wrong about him? And had you not seen what he did to this child, you wouldn't look at him the same way as you would look at, say, Albert's brother, who stabs maids in the hand for not pouring tea correctly. But this is the type of man who let power and wealth go to his head, that he views his status as so much better than the other. Anyone who can turn away a dying boy because you don't want their doctor to touch him, like, there's no excusing that. And you can definitely tell that that's the type of person who would continue to abuse that power down the line, and who knows what he would use his wealth for eventually. This story is doing really well, is making us root for the criminals, all things considered. That the way status and wealth is being portrayed in this time period, in this Victorian era, there's no way for people to get their just desserts. There's no way for literally, the guy says in this episode that the reason he doesn't use his talents in better places is because his father and his father before him worked for this man. And that's just how the time is. You can't abandon that. That's simply what's expected of you. Just so happens that that's the same person who let your son die. This is a horrifying time period, and every time period is horrifying in a different sense, but just to see what can happen, and just honestly, just as the slices were being made and she picked up the knife, I wasn't even going to be complaining as she stabbed the guy, honestly. At the same time, I knew that would bite them in the ass, so it was interesting that she was actually in on it. I wasn't expecting them to bring her in on it because I thought she was too far gone. I felt like there was no reasoning with her. I thought she kind of lost her marbles and she didn't have a sense of clarity. So it's interesting how it was all part of the plan, and just the idea of the grapefruit juice afterwards, and he takes his medicine. It's just like the perfect crime, and that's constantly what I feel like with him. And until we introduce Sherlock Holmes, it's going to continue to be the perfect crime. There's going to be no real competition for Moriarty, and I think what they're pretty much aiming to do is to continue to really build this case that we trust in the Moriarty brothers, that they are doing the right thing even if they technically are doing the wrong thing. So by the time Sherlock comes in, we're going to say, no, you're the wrong person. You're trying to stop people from getting the just desserts that they deserve. And that's where the butting heads of ideologies are really going to come into play, because really Sherlock Holmes, it's not necessarily about him solving the crime to be a good person. It's more about solving the crime because that's his thrill of the kill. And for someone like Moriarty in this series, it's clearly he wants to kill these people so they get the justice. The families that were wronged can have that justice. And it's a very interesting butting heads, and honestly, I'm excited to see what they're going to continue to do with this. I might honestly argue this was one of these, I'd say probably the second best episode. I think last week is my overall favorite episode. I really like what they do with the backstory, but there was something about, rather than going a mystery with this and just putting it all on the thriller aspect, it really made me hopeful for the series, because you can argue that if episode 1 was a good indicator on how the mystery was going to be handled, that could be an issue for something kind of harnessing the Sherlock Holmes banner. This is a good indicator. This is going to be exceptional. I'm not exactly sure when Sherlock Holmes is going to pop up. My educated guess, maybe 7 or 8. I don't think he's going to be introduced too soon. I wouldn't even be surprised if we don't see him this first half, but I'm excited for when we do see him, because that's where everything's going to change. But so far right now, I'm loving the criminal consultants and just the idea of someone who's technically, by the world's view, evil, as someone we want to root for and say sometimes we need that in our own reality. Let me know your thoughts and feelings down below on this week's episode of Moriarty the Patriot, and what did you think of the kill? Did you see it coming, or was it something that actually kind of shocked you with how they're able to nail it and make it look like it was just natural causes? Whatever you feel, and of course let me know. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like to show your support and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.